Hello, welcome to CRPS Contender, my complex regional pain syndrome education channel. Today's video is Emotional Energy Accounting, Attachment, Authenticity, and Self-Betrayal. This video is part of my Narrow Minds Till the Soul Begins to Break, CRPS, a biopsychosocial developmental disorder series. In this series, I will be discussing my own personal hypothesis as to why I think CRPS happens and the type of individual that it happens to. I just kind of want to clarify what I'm going to be doing throughout this series. If you'll notice the left column, in this column, I will be discussing well-established concepts and giving basic introductions to them because they are important to understand before I get into my personal hypothesis about CRPS. So this left side of this slide is all about things that already exist. I haven't come up with any of these. These are well-evidenced concepts. On the right side, I will be discussing how I think those concepts on the left side apply specifically to CRPS. Okay, with that out of the way, let's hop right into the content here. Attachment. Now, I have already done a video on attachment. If you have not watched that yet, please go watch that before you continue any further in this video. That being said, let's do a quick refresher on what attachment is. Attachment is the lasting psychological connectedness between human beings to receive comfort and care when frightened or stressed. Your attachment style is based on the ability of the primary caregiver to be available, sensitive, and responsive to the child's needs, providing the child with a secure base and a sense of safety from which they can then explore the world with joy and with pleasure. Without attachment to an adult, the child will likely die before they reach maturation. Attachment is an evolutionary mechanism to reach adulthood. There are 4 attachment styles. In childhood, these are known as secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. When you become an adult, they change the names just to make things a bit more confusing, and they become secure, preoccupied, dismissive, and fearful avoidant. Attachment styles form a continuum of emotional regulation and affect the way individuals deal with loss, grief, and trauma. That being said, all attachment styles are the positive result of a child's reaction to stress and how they deal with their environment. None of these are wrong. Some of them might be a bit unhealthy, but they were all done to help the child cope with their environment, and they all work. That is why the child developed this style. The 3 insecure attachment styles of anxious, avoidant, and disorganized can be transformed into earned secure attachments at any age with the appropriate time, effort, and dedication to create a secure attachment, leading to healthier relationships and communication. This is something that takes time and effort. It is not something that will happen with the snap of a finger. Okay, now that little refresher is out of the way, let's talk about its partner. If you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, you know I talk about the autonomic nervous system a lot. The autonomic nervous system has 2 major subsections, your sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. One deals with mobilization responses when you are feeling threatened, and one deals with maintenance responses when you are feeling secure. These systems work in opposition to each other, but they are both important and necessary for human beings' continued function. And the concepts I'm going to be talking about today, attachment and authenticity, work in much the same manner. The core human needs, to be seen, to be heard, and to be able to genuinely express yourself, fall into 2 major categories. Attachment, which is the sense of connection, belonging, and acceptance with other human beings, and authenticity, which is the ability to know what your needs are and the ability to express those needs without fear of rejection. Authenticity is being able to connect to and understand your body and how it is interacting with its environment. It is the ability to detect needs and respond to threats. Biopsychosocial means that the mind and the body cannot be separated, and that the individual and the environment cannot be separated. This is one system of function, and what affects one affects the other. When a choice has to be made between attachment and authenticity, the authentic expression of needs gets suppressed to maintain attachment to the caregiver, disabling our ability to rely on ourselves in order to connect to the caregiver. This is because if the child loses a connection to the caregiver, they will likely die. In response to our suppressed authenticity, we create false needs, which revolve around our fear of abandonment, eroding our self and maintaining our dysfunction and devaluation to gain acceptance from something outside of ourselves. Now that basic introduction of the difference between attachment and authenticity, and the fact that authenticity gets sacrificed to maintain attachment, let's talk about betrayal trauma. Complex trauma is traumatic stressors that are interpersonal, that are premeditated, planned, and caused by other humans, such as violations or exploitation of another person. At its core, all trauma is relational, involving at least our relationship to ourselves, and, more likely than not, our relationship with other human beings as well. Complex trauma is most often associated with children who experience various types of repeated relational violations during key developmental moments, cumulative adversities experienced by communities or oppressed groups, or adults with chronic relational trauma that destroys the foundational trust in primary relationships. Complex trauma summarizes the levels of stress, distress, and the emotional fragmentation of the betrayal that is experienced. There are 7 reactions to the impact of trauma, which result in 2 major categories of symptoms. Emotional dysregulation, because emotions are felt unconsciously in the autonomic nervous system before they consciously register in your egocentric awareness, and relational disconnection. Betrayal trauma impacts our feelings of safety, security, and all our relationships in the present and the future. So let's talk a little bit more about emotional dysregulation. There are 3 major aspects of this, and they all affect your autonomic nervous system. Alterations in the regulation of affective impulses. This means that your emotions are big and they change often and rapidly. You are on an emotional roller coaster. You have a limited ability to remain calm and not be swept away in the emotional responses due to chronic mind-brain-body activation of the autonomic nervous system and limbic system. There are also alterations in attention and consciousness. Emotional dysregulation impacts our ability to connect to the prefrontal cortex, which is the area of the brain that is responsible for focus, the ability to pay attention, make decisions, carry out executive functions, assign meaning to experiences, and engage in socially appropriate behavior. When you cannot connect to your prefrontal cortex, this results in difficulties with memory, tracking information, concentrating, staying present in the moment, staying present in the body, and interpersonal interactions with other human beings. And finally, somatization or other medical problems. Emotional dysregulation creates prolonged stress, and it has major impacts on health and wellness, resulting in a wide range of health problems surfacing after the discovery of betrayal. This ranges from easily diagnosable ailments to mystery symptoms that no one seems to be able to accurately diagnose, but that the betrayed individual feels acutely in the form of dysfunction, body-based pain, and discomfort. If you have not read The Body Keeps a Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, I strongly recommend that you listen to it or read it. On my channel, I have a playlist dedicated to this as an audiobook. It is about 20 hours long, and it will probably stir up some things inside of you. So take it as you need to, but if you have a problem staying focused and being able to pay attention to reading now, or if your eyes hurt, or you have a hard time comprehending written language, go ahead, check out that audiobook. It's there for you. It is free. You will not regret it. This is an excellent resource. Okay, now let's move on to relational disconnection, the result of damaged trust. Alterations in your self-perception. You experience loss after loss after loss after loss, and you lose your connection to yourself. Joy no longer exists for you. You become fearful, restricted, isolated, exhausted, alienated, and depressed. It also creates alterations in your perception of the perpetrator. The person who broke your trust shatters your perception of reality, and the discovery permanently alters your understanding of that individual, leaving us adrift and lost. It also creates alterations in relationships to others. The wounding of betrayal leaves us wanting to curl in and protect ourselves so that we don't get hurt again. It creates doubt in our ability to accurately perceive others. If this person that you trusted so much and you had a lot of faith in has betrayed you, Well, what does that say about your ability to accurately see what others are like? It creates feelings of mistrust and doubt in others' authenticity and their motives, and this leads to isolation of the person who was betrayed. It also creates alterations in our systems of meaning and challenges our faith in goodness, reliability, hope, love, kindness, compassion, honesty, meaning, and the purpose of life. So now I want to discuss a little bit, actually, rather a good amount, of emotional energy and self-betrayal accounting. Now, this channel is also therapeutic for me. I've known it in the back of my mind for quite a while, but I've just actually started really dealing with it and seeing how it actually impacts my life. But I have Asperger's, and I've been researching that simultaneously as well. I'm also researching my CRPS. My Asperger's research started much later, in the last couple weeks, actually. And a excellent thing that I have found is called energy accounting. This is a technique that is used by autistic individuals to assist in budgeting energy expenditure to prevent meltdowns due to overstimulation. And this is exactly what happens in CRPS as well, where you are oversensitive to the stimuli in your environment, and so your sympathetic nervous system just goes off and creates a real survival threat to your perception of your environment. So how does this work? Create a list of things, whether this is physical activities you engage in, psychological tasks that you need to do, or the emotional responses that your environment creates in you. This can be positive or negative things, but just tasks, things that happen to you. And you're going to want to put them into two categories. Things that either drain energy from you, we're going to call those withdrawals, or things that replenish your energy, we'll call those deposits. We want to add a numerical value to each of those tasks, ranging from 1 to 100, weighing what it takes from or gives to you. And then we're going to create a balance sheet. The goal here is to prevent the account from running into the negative, which can trigger a meltdown due to your autonomic nervous system overactivity from sensitivity levels. This can be applied to your current situation and your daily levels of function, and it should be. But you can also do this to your past lived experiences to see what kind of debt you have racked up to get yourself through the environment in which you were pushed beyond your limits. Energy is the ability to be active and accomplish things. Banks accept deposits and offer loans. Energy banking is the accumulation, storage, withdrawal, and advance of energy within the individual to be secure, functional, regulated, integrated, and interactive with the environment. Let's talk a little bit about lines of credits, just in case you're not super familiar with economics. Line of credit is an open-ended loan that lets one borrow at any time up to a set amount. It's a form of revolving credit in which you can borrow, spend, repay, borrow some more, repay, spend, borrow some more, up to the set limit on almost an endless cycle. The interest is calculated only on the money that is borrowed, not on the entire set amount of the loan, but it begins on the first day that it is borrowed. The limit can be altered by the person who holds the loan at any time. There is no set repayment schedule, which means as opposed to a standard loan where, okay, you've borrowed this much and you have to pay this on a monthly basis. That's not what happens in a line of credit. You just have to make payments. You can make whatever payments you want, basically, on no set schedule. At the end of the term, which can vary widely, but let's just say it's 10 years, whatever is left of the principal balance and all the accumulated interest is due. Let's talk a little bit about daily energy integer. This is the daily deposit that is produced by the body during your time of rest. So when you wake up, you have energy in your account that you can use to prevent you from borrowing from your line of credit. But if you utilize all that energy, you have to borrow or have some sort of meltdown. So how does that get applied to CRPS? Now I'm going to talk about myself a little bit here. I have Asperger's. The environment in which I was raised would not have allowed Asperger's meltdowns at all. If I had had meltdowns, it would have severely threatened my attachment. And so I suppressed those meltdowns and went deeply into debt, constantly running up a line of credit and borrowing from the future to get through the day. And my debt that I owe from my childhood is absolutely crushing. And I don't think I'm ever going to be able to pay it off. So let's talk a little bit about childhood lines of credit. A deficit is the difference between what is deposited and what is withdrawn. Debt is the amount that is owed. It is all of the accumulated deficits plus any outstanding interest. I want to further expand on the concept of energy accounting in autism and apply it to CRPS. But whereas in autism, you're basically counting each individual day, I want to account for the entire life in two different lines of credits. The childhood attachment line of credit and the adult authenticity line of credit. Now, I am going to be applying this to my particular situation. So the details of this might be a bit different for your situation, but I think you should be able to broadly apply it to your situation based on your particular context. Okay, but for me, my childhood attachment line of credit lasted for as long as my childhood environment. I was able to borrow from this childhood attachment line of credit to suppress my authenticity for the purpose of maintaining my attachment to my caregivers. I paid upfront for this in self-betrayal, but ended up paying throughout my life in other forms. For as long as the circumstances of my childhood environment remained, the line of credit was uncapped and the debt grew larger and larger and larger, allowing for me to survive into adulthood. But when my childhood environment changed, the term was over and the debt was due. For me, this happened about 3 months after I turned 19 when I was doing a semester of studying abroad, and I left my caregiver's household for the first time. Within 3 months, I developed CRPS. And then, once my study abroad semester was over and I went back, I no longer lived in my caregiver's household, but I was in frequent, close physical contact with them. And so my CRPS symptoms, I don't know if it went into remission or if I just stopped paying attention to it, but I suppressed that and I didn't address it. And because I went back into that environment and I needed to survive, the debt reopened and I kept adding to it. And then I graduated college and I moved away and it started up again. If you cannot pay your debt immediately, your daily energy will just be taken away from you before it even hits your energy bank account. It will be collected to pay your debt until the debt is paid. Now let's talk a little bit about the adult authenticity line of credit. For me, this is a far lower credit limit than my childhood attachment line of credit. My daily energy integer never even hits my energy bank account, and it goes off towards paying my childhood debt. So I start my day with no energy. When a deficit occurs, which means you use more energy than you have in your account, there's an SNS strike, and you experience a CRPS flare, and it puts you in the negative. You're in the negative, and it might say, okay, we'll let you borrow. I'm just going to pull a random number for the sake of making this easy to understand. Let's say it lets you go to 1,000 in the negative. It will loan you 1,000 credits in adulthood. Once you hit 0, you start having sympathetic activity and a flare. You go below that, and you start approaching your limit. Let's say you're at 900. You start getting really, really suicidal. You hit 1,000, you can't handle it anymore. You have nothing more to offer, nothing more you can borrow. It's time to die. You're going to kill yourself. So the goal here is to engage in activities that deposit energy into your account. So maybe that is taking vitamins. Maybe that is making sure you stay hydrated. Maybe that is engaging in an anti-inflammatory diet or engaging in yoga, or deepening your bonds to other human beings, or playing with your dog, or whatever it is for you, having a smoothie. Anything that shows care to yourself and authenticity. Maybe that means, hey, you know what? I feel like crap, and I'm going to say that rather than keeping it to myself. Or, you know what? What you said really hurt me. I'm going to tell you that rather than being silent and taking it. Because if I don't say anything, well, you know what? That takes 10 credits from me. But if I do say something, that gives me 3 credits. Now, it might be more of a learned behavior for you to not say anything, but it's damaging you. And it's putting you closer and closer to reaching your absolute limit. So the goal here is to increase the energy in your account by caring for yourself and engaging in healthy patterns and healthy lifestyle, and dealing with your own emotional state and expressing your needs and your boundaries to others. So this is an analogy and a tool that you can use to help your day go more smoothly. So let's say you wake up and your daily energy integer is 120, and that immediately gets taken from you, and you don't wake up with 120 in your energy bank account. You wake up with 0 in your energy bank account, and then you have to get out of bed. Let's say that takes 2 credits, so now you're in -2. Then you get up, the first thing you do is go to the bathroom, take your medication, take your vitamins. Well, there you go. Taking the vitamins, that gives you +5. And putting on your medication, that gives you +15. So now you are at +18, not at negative, whatever number it was. I said I can't remember, -2, -3, whatever it was. So the point is, anything that you do is going to require energy. But you can pay yourself with things that are good for you. And that's what I want to encourage you to do. So, a quick recap here. In this video, we talked about attachment, authenticity, betrayal and complex trauma, emotional dysregulation, relational disconnection, self-betrayal and energy accounting, the childhood attachment line of credit, the adult authenticity balance, and your overall amount of debt. If you liked this analogy and you would like to further explore the concepts behind this, I strongly recommend checking out any lectures by Dr. Gabor Mate, who talks about childhood stress, addiction, and the biology of loss. I have a dedicated playlist for him on my channel homepage. Definitely recommend you check that out. Also, again, Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. If you haven't read that or listened to it yet, again, I have an audiobook playlist right there on my channel that you can check out. Okay, I hope this gives you a framework, a new tool that you can use to work with, and a different way of looking at CRPS, or maybe better clarification of a way that you already were looking at it. Thanks so much for watching. If you'd like to contribute to my medical expenses, my Patreon is listed below. If you like the content I'm producing here, hit subscribe. You're welcome to share any of the content I produce on this channel. As always, relevant sources are linked in the description below. I hope you learned something today, and I hope to see you next time.